The dust-covered sign for Cedar Ridge barely registered as Sophia Bennett sped past it, her convertibles top down despite the scorching Arizona heat. 3 months ago, she'd been sitting in her corner office in Seattle's financial district, making decisions that affected thousands. Now, she was driving toward nowhere in particular, with everything she still cared about packed in her trunk. The burnout hadn't just changed her career. It had altered something fundamental inside her soul. What she didn't know was that the quiet canyon ahead held more than just solitude. It held a cowboy whose golden heart would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The red rock formations of Saguaro Canyon loomed ahead, their majestic silhouettes cutting against the fierce blue sky. Sophia adjusted her sunglasses and checked her GPS, which had been showing signal lost for the past 20 minutes. She wasn't concerned. Getting lost was part of the plan. After 10 years of climbing the corporate ladder, of 80-hour weeks and sacrificed relationships, her doctor's words had finally forced her to listen. Your body is shutting down, Sophia. It's telling you what your mind won't admit. Her luxury apartment, her executive position at Westfield Financial, her engagement to fellow executive Richard. She'd left it all behind with nothing but a resignation letter and a broken promise. I just need space to breathe, she'd told Richard, slipping his 2-carat diamond back into his palm. The hurt in his eyes had almost made her reconsider, but the panic attacks that came every morning told her she had no choice. The convertible's engine suddenly sputtered, then coughed, then died. No, 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 Sophia muttered, guiding the car to the shoulder of the narrow canyon road. She turned the key. Nothing but an empty click. Perfect. Just perfect. She checked her phone. No service, of course. The nearest town was Cedar Ridge, at least 10 miles back. The sun beat down mercilessly as she popped the hood and stared helplessly at the engine. Finance executives didn't typically take auto shop in business school. A bead of sweat trickled down her spine, dampening her silk blouse. Completely impractical for the desert heat, but she hadn't exactly planned this escape with wilderness survival in mind. The sound of hooves made her turn. A man on horseback approached from further up the canyon, the dust cloud rising behind him catching the sunlight like gold powder. As he drew closer, Sophia's city instincts kicked in, alone, middle of nowhere, strange man. But something about his relaxed posture in the saddle quieted her alarm. "Car trouble?" he called, his voice carrying easily across the still desert air. "Nothing serious," she lied, closing the hood with more confidence than she felt. "Just letting it cool down." He brought his horse to a stop about 10 feet away. The animal was magnificent, chestnut-colored with a black mane and intelligent eyes. Its rider wasn't what Sophia would have expected from the word cowboy. Yes, there was the hat, well-worn boots, and sun-weathered skin, but his eyes were startlingly blue against his tanned face, and his smile held no trace of the condescension she was bracing for. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked, dismounting with fluid grace. "Name's Noah Callahan, by the way. My ranch is just up that trail." He gestured toward a narrow path that Sophia hadn't even noticed. "Sophia Bennett," she replied, extending her hand automatically, the way she would to a new client. His palm was calloused against her smooth skin. "And I suppose I could use some help. The car just died." Noah tied his horse to a scrubby juniper and approached the vehicle. "Mind popping the hood again?" As he leaned over the engine, Sophia found herself studying him. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone completely comfortable in his own skin, something she'd rarely seen in the power-posturing corporate world she'd left behind. "Your fuel pump's shot," he announced after a few minutes. "And in this heat, I wouldn't be surprised if your engine's overheated too." He straightened up, wiping his hands on a bandana pulled from his pocket. "I can tow you back to Cedar Ridge, but Miguel's garage is closed until Monday." "Monday? That's 3 days from now." Sophia's carefully constructed non-plan suddenly felt foolish. What had she been thinking, driving into the desert without even a proper emergency kit? Noah seemed to read her thoughts. "You're welcome to stay at Callahan Ranch until then. I've got a guest cabin that doesn't get much use." Clean sheets, running water, and my housekeeper, Rosa, makes enough food for an army. Any other time, Sophia would have refused immediately. She didn't accept favors from strangers. It created uncomfortable obligations. But the alternative was what? Sleeping in her car in 100-degree heat? That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose, she said, the polite refusal automatic. Noah's smile was easy, genuine in a way that disarmed her. It's no imposition. Nobody should be stranded in Saguaro Canyon, especially not a city girl who packed like she was headed to a board meeting instead of the desert. Sophia glanced down at her impractical outfit and couldn't help laughing. Is it that obvious? The Louboutins might have given you away, he said, nodding toward her red-soled heels. Definitely not standard desert exploration gear. An hour later, Sophia found herself perched somewhat awkwardly behind Noah on his horse, her car locked and temporarily abandoned after he'd helped her grab an overnight bag. Her arms circled his waist lightly, trying to maintain some semblance of personal space despite the intimate position. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. You can hold on tighter, he said over his shoulder as the horse began to climb the narrow trail. Daisy won't mind, and I promise not to get the wrong idea. Reluctantly, Sophia tightened her grip as the trail grew steeper. The scent of leather, sunshine, and something like sage filled her senses. It was oddly comforting. So what brings a Seattle financial executive to the middle of nowhere, Arizona? Noah asked as they rounded a bend in the trail. Sophia stiffened. How did you know I'm from Seattle? Your license plate, he replied simply. And the financial executive part was a guess based on the car, the clothes, and the way you shook my hand like you were closing a deal. She relaxed slightly. That obvious, huh? I've gotten pretty good at reading people. Not much else to do out here sometimes. The trail opened up suddenly, revealing a view that made Sophia gasp. Nestled in a natural basin, protected by towering red canyon walls, lay a ranch that seemed to belong in a movie. A sprawling main house built of timber and stone sat at its center, surrounded by several smaller cabins, a large barn, and corrals where horses grazed peacefully. Fields of what looked like alfalfa stretched toward the back of the property, irrigated by a creek that caught the sunlight like scattered diamonds. Welcome to Callahan Canyon Ranch, Noah said, a hint of pride in his voice. Been in my family for 4 generations. It's beautiful, Sophia said honestly, momentarily forgetting her discomfort at the situation. As they approached the main house, a woman emerged onto the wide porch. She was perhaps in her 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and a face that looked like it smiled often. Noah, who have you brought home this time? She called, her accent revealing Mexican origins. Stranded motorist Rosa, Noah called back. This is Sophia. She'll be staying in the blue cabin until Miguel can fix her car on Monday. Rosa's warm brown eyes assessed Sophia with open curiosity as Noah helped her dismount. Welcome to the ranch, Sophia. You look like you could use some lemonade and maybe a hat before that pretty skin burns to a crisp. Before Sophia could respond, a blur of motion and excited barking announced the arrival of a dog, a border collie that circled them enthusiastically before sitting at Noah's feet, looking up at Sophia with intelligent eyes. And this is Einstein, Noah said, scratching the dog's ears. Smartest dog in 3 counties and completely harmless unless you're a sheep trying to escape. Sophia cautiously offered her hand to the dog, who sniffed it politely before giving it a quick lick of approval. I'm more of a cat person, actually, she admitted. Well, we've got a few barn cats too, but they're not nearly as sociable, Noah replied with a smile. Come on, I'll show you to the cabin, and then you can join us for dinner if you'd like. Rosa makes the best chile rellenos this side of the border. The blue cabin turned out to be a charming little structure near the creek, far more comfortable than Sophia had expected. A queen-sized bed with a handmade quilt dominated one wall, while a small kitchenette and sitting area with a stone fireplace filled the rest of the space. The bathroom was small but modern, with fluffy towels stacked neatly beside a clawfoot tub. It's not the Ritz, Noah said, setting her bag down inside the door, but it should be comfortable enough for a few days. It's perfect, Sophia replied, meaning it. After months of feeling suffocated, The simple, open space felt like exactly what she needed. "Thank you. I really appreciate this." "Dinner's at 6, he said, tipping his hat slightly. "No dress code, but you might want to change into something more canyon appropriate if you plan to look around." His eyes twinkled with good-natured teasing as he glanced at her city attire. After he left, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. This morning, she'd been driving with no destination, trying to outrun the emptiness that had been growing inside her for years. Now she was at a stranger's ranch, about to have dinner with people who looked at her without the calculation and assessment she was used to in her professional life. She unpacked her bag, grimacing at how ill-prepared she was for ranch life. Designer jeans, silk blouses, and not a sensible shoe in sight. Finally, she settled on the most casual outfit she had: white jeans, a light blue cotton top, and a pair of flat sandals. It would have to do. As she changed, Sophia caught her reflection in the small mirror above the dresser and barely recognized herself. Her usually perfect bob was windblown, her carefully applied makeup mostly worn off, and there was a spattering of freckles already emerging across her nose from the desert sun. Strangely, she didn't hate it. The woman in the mirror looked younger somehow, less guarded. A soft knock at the door announced Rosa, bearing a tray with a pitcher of lemonade, a wide-brimmed straw hat, and what appeared to be homemade cookies. "I thought you might need refreshment after your adventure," she said, bustling in without waiting for an invitation. "And this hat belonged to Noah's sister Maggie before she moved to California. She won't miss it, and your pretty city skin needs protection." "That's very thoughtful, thank you," Sophia said, accepting the hat and trying it on. It felt strange. She usually avoided anything that might mess up her carefully styled hair. But out here, practicality trumped vanity. Rosa studied her with frank curiosity. "So what brings a beautiful city woman all alone to Saguaro Canyon?" Not many take this road unless they're very lost or running from something. The direct question caught Sophia off guard. In Seattle, people maintained careful distances, respecting unspoken boundaries with polite disinterest. "I'm just taking some time off," she said carefully. "Needed a change of scenery." Rosa's knowing smile suggested she heard the half-truth but wouldn't press further. "Well, the canyon has a way of healing people who need it. You come to dinner when you're ready. No rush." After Rosa left, Sophia ventured outside with her lemonade, drawn to the sound of the creek. She found a smooth rock at the water's edge and sat, listening to the gentle gurgle as it flowed past. In the distance, she could see Noah working with a horse in one of the corrals, his movements patient and deliberate. For the first time in months, possibly years, Sophia felt the knot of anxiety in her chest begin to loosen. The relentless internal voice that normally cataloged tasks, deadlines, and obligations had quieted, replaced by the simpler awareness of the sun on her skin and the sound of water over stones. When she arrived at the main house for dinner, she found not just Noah and Rosa, but 3 ranch hands as well, all seated around a massive wooden table laden with food. The men stood when she entered, a courtesy that seemed natural rather than performative. "Everyone, this is Sophia," Noah introduced her. "She'll be staying with us until Monday." "Sophia, this is Luis, Miguel's son, who helps with the horses. Hank, who's been with us since my father's time. And Ethan, our newest addition, who's learning the ropes." The dinner was unlike any Sophia had experienced in years. The food was simple but delicious. Chiles rellenos as promised. Fresh tortillas, beans with green chilies, and a salad of tomatoes and cucumbers that Rosa proudly announced came from her garden. The conversation flowed easily, full of stories and good-natured teasing, completely devoid of the competitive undertones she was accustomed to at business dinners. "So, Sophia," Hank asked, his weathered face creased with genuine interest, "what do you do when you're not getting stranded in canyons?" All eyes turned to her, and Sophia felt an unexpected reluctance to mention her executive position. "I work in finance," she said simply. "In Seattle." "Like a bank teller?" Ethan asked, earning a gentle elbow from Luis. Sophia smiled. More like investment management. I help people decide where to put their money. It was a dramatic oversimplification of her role overseeing a team of 30 and managing portfolios worth billions, but it felt right for the moment. Sounds complicated, Noah commented, passing her a basket of tortillas. Do you enjoy it? The question was so straightforward, so free of the usual layers of meaning that accompanied professional discussions, that Sophia found herself answering honestly. I used to. Very much. Lately, though. She trailed off, surprised by her own openness. Lately the joy has gone, Rosa finished for her, nodding as if this was perfectly understandable. Sometimes we climb so high we forget why we started climbing in the first place. The simple wisdom of the statement resonated so deeply that Sophia had to look down at her plate to hide her reaction. How had this woman she'd known for hours seen what colleagues of 10 years had missed? After dinner, Noah invited her to join him on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the canyon walls in fiery hues of orange and red, while the basin where the ranch sat was already falling into soft shadow. Your home is incredible, Sophia said, accepting the mug of coffee he offered. How long has your family been here? Since 1903, Noah replied, settling into a rocking chair beside her. My great-grandfather claimed the land after working as a trail guide. The story goes that he fell in love with this canyon and refused to leave, even when better land was available elsewhere. I can see why, Sophia murmured, watching as the last rays of sunlight caught the highest canyon walls, making them glow like embers. What about you? Noah asked. Any family waiting for your return in Seattle? Sophia hesitated. My parents live in Boston. We're not particularly close. They wanted me to go into law like my father, so my choice of finance was something of a rebellion. She smiled wryly at how that would sound to most people. Choosing one prestigious career over another hardly qualified as revolutionary. And no husband, partner? The question was asked casually, but Sophia caught the flicker of interest in his eyes. There was someone, she admitted. We worked at the same firm. The engagement ended recently. She twisted her hands in her lap, the phantom weight of Richard's diamond still somehow present. He didn't understand why I needed to leave. Noah nodded, not pushing for more details. Sometimes the hardest thing is explaining something you don't fully understand yourself. The insight surprised her. Yes, she agreed softly. Exactly that. They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell completely, the stars emerging with a clarity and abundance Sophia had never seen in the city. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like spilled sugar, and the longer she looked, the more stars seemed to appear. It's overwhelming, isn't it? Noah said, watching her upturned face. Makes your problems seem smaller somehow. And yet larger at the same time, Sophia replied. Like they're both insignificant and the most important thing in the universe. Noah's smile was visible even in the dim light. You're not what I expected when I found you on the roadside, Sophia Bennett. What did you expect? Honestly, someone who'd complain about the lack of cell service and be desperate to get back to civilization. He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking softly. Instead, you seem, I don't know, like maybe you were looking for exactly what you found. Sophia considered this. Had some unconscious part of her been searching for this place? This quiet? Maybe I was. She conceded. I didn't know what I needed when I left Seattle. I just knew I couldn't stay. The confession hung in the night air between them, more honest than anything she'd said to anyone in months, including herself. Well, Noah said finally, standing and stretching. Whatever you're looking for, you're welcome here while you search. I start early, but Rosa will have breakfast whenever you wake up. As Sophia walked back to her cabin, guided by the beam of a flashlight Noah had lent her, she felt strangely at peace. The panic that had been her constant companion for months had receded to a distant hum, replaced by something she couldn't quite name. Not happiness exactly, but perhaps its quieter cousin. The cabin welcomed her with rustic comfort, and as she prepared for bed, she realized she hadn't checked her phone since arriving. In her old life, going hours without email was unthinkable. Now she'd gone nearly a day without even noticing. She dug the device from her purse, no service as expected, and set it aside without the usual pang of anxiety. As she slipped beneath the quilt, the unfamiliar sounds of the canyon night surrounded her. The soft rushing of the creek, the occasional hoot of an owl, the whisper of wind through juniper branches. In her high-rise Seattle apartment, she'd needed a white noise machine to sleep through the city's constant hum. Here, the natural symphony lulled her into the deepest sleep she'd had in years. Morning came with golden light filtering through the cabin's windows, and the distant sounds of the ranch already awake and working. Sophia dressed in her city version of casual designer jeans and a light sweater, and made her way to the main house, where she found Rosa kneading dough at a flour-dusted table. "Buenos dias," Rosa greeted her warmly. "You slept well? The canyon air is good medicine." "Better than I have in months," Sophia admitted, accepting the mug of coffee Rosa poured for her. "Where is everyone?" "Noah and the men left at dawn to move cattle to the north pasture. They'll be back by midday." Rosa shaped the dough into round balls with practiced efficiency. "You are welcome to explore, but be careful not to wander too far. The canyon can be dangerous for those who don't know it." After a breakfast of fresh tortillas, eggs, and something Rosa called nopales, apparently cactus, though it tasted better than Sophia would have expected, she took Rosa's advice and explored the immediate surroundings of the ranch. The barn was a marvel of old-world craftsmanship, built of massive timbers that had weathered to a silvery gray. Inside, the scent of hay and horses created an atmosphere both foreign and oddly comforting. Several horses regarded her curiously from their stalls, and a litter of kittens scattered at her approach, hiding in the hay bales. Beyond the barn, a workshop housed tools whose purposes Sophia could only guess at, along with half-finished woodworking projects. A saddle stood on a rack, its leather partially carved with an intricate pattern of oak leaves and acorns. She ran her fingers over the design, impressed by the craftsmanship. "That's Noah's work," Rosa's voice came from behind her. "He makes them through the winter when ranch work slows down. That one is for Maggie's daughter when she visits this summer." "It's beautiful," Sophia said honestly. "I had no idea such things were still made by hand." Rosa's smile held a hint of sadness. "Many old ways are being forgotten, but not here. Noah's father taught him, as his father taught before. The Callahan men have always had golden hands to match their hearts." The phrase caught Sophia's attention. "Golden hearts?" It is what the people in Cedar Ridge say about the Callahan men. They give without counting the cost, help without expecting return." Rosa gestured around them. "This land would be worth millions to developers who want to build resorts. But Noah keeps it as it has always been, employing local people, helping neighbors when times are hard." The idea was so at odds with the world Sophia had inhabited, where every action was calculated for maximum return, where generosity was a strategic move rather than a character trait, that she found it almost difficult to comprehend. "He must be quite successful to maintain all this," Sophia observed, looking around at the well-kept buildings and equipment. Rosa's laugh was genuine. "The ranch does well enough. Noah is a smart businessman beneath the cowboy hat." "But rich?" "No, not in the way you might measure. He turned down an offer last year that would have made him a millionaire many times over." "Why?" The question escaped before Sophia could consider how it might sound. "Because some things matter more than money," Rosa replied simply. "A lesson many never learn, even with all their education." Her gaze held Sophia's for a moment, not unkindly, but with clear meaning. Before Sophia could respond, Einstein came bounding into the workshop, circling her once before heading to the door, looking back expectantly. "He wants you to follow," Rosa explained. Noah and the others must be returning. Sophia followed the dog across the ranch yard toward the northern trail, where a dust cloud announced the approach of riders. As they came into view, she was struck by the timeless tableau they presented. Men on horseback driving a small herd of cattle, their silhouettes outlined against the canyon walls, just as they might have been 100 years ago. Noah rode at the lead, his posture relaxed but authoritative. When he spotted Sophia waiting, he broke away from the group and urged his horse forward to meet her. "Good morning," he called, dismounting with that same fluid grace she'd noticed yesterday. "How's our city girl doing in the wild?" The teasing nickname didn't bother her as it might have from someone else. "Surprisingly well," she replied, "though I'm woefully underdressed for ranch life." Noah's eyes took in her designer outfit with amusement. "We might be able to help with that. Maggie left some clothes that would be more practical if you're interested." The offer of borrowed clothes would have been unthinkable in Sophia's previous life. She, who had a closet organized by designer and color, who never wore the same outfit to important meetings. Yet here, it seemed the most natural solution. "I'd appreciate that," she said sincerely. These jeans weren't exactly made for hiking. After the cattle were settled in their new pasture, Noah kept his promise, presenting Sophia with a stack of clothes that his sister had left behind. "Maggie's about your size, maybe a bit taller," he explained. "Nothing fancy, but it'll be more comfortable than what you've got." The borrowed wardrobe was indeed simple. Jeans worn soft with age, cotton shirts, a light jacket, and most precious of all, a pair of broken-in boots that fit surprisingly well. Sophia changed quickly, immediately feeling the difference as she moved around the cabin. The clothes allowed her to breathe, to stretch, to exist without constant awareness of maintaining a perfect appearance. When she emerged from the cabin in her new attire, she found Noah waiting with 2 horses saddled and ready. "I thought you might want to see more of the canyon," he said. "If you're up for a ride." Sophia hesitated. "I should probably mention that I've never been on a horse before." Noah's surprise was evident. "Never? Not even at summer camp or something?" "My summer camps were for future business leaders," Sophia admitted with a small laugh. "More spreadsheets than stables." Instead of the dismissal she half expected, Noah simply nodded. "Well then, we'll start slow. This is Mariposa," he said, indicating the smaller of the 2 horses. "A dappled gray with gentle eyes. She's about the sweetest-tempered horse you'll ever meet. Perfect for beginners." With patient instruction and steady hands to guide her, Noah helped Sophia mount and taught her the basics of handling the reins. Mariposa stood placidly through it all, occasionally turning her head as if checking on her nervous rider. "You're a natural," Noah encouraged as Sophia took her first tentative steps around the corral. "Just relax and let your body move with her. That's it." After 30 minutes of practice, Noah deemed her ready for a short trail ride. "We'll take it easy," he promised. "And Mariposa will follow Einstein and me without you having to do much." The trail wound gently up the canyon wall, offering increasingly spectacular views as they climbed. Noah pointed out features of the landscape: the hawk's nest high on a cliff face, the ancient pictographs left by indigenous peoples centuries ago, the places where flash floods had carved new paths through the stone. They stopped at a natural plateau halfway up the canyon wall, dismounting to rest the horses and take in the view. The ranch lay below them like a miniature model, the buildings and corrals dwarfed by the massive landscape surrounding them. "It's breathtaking," Sophia said, finding the word inadequate for the majesty spread before them. "You must never get tired of this view." "Never have," Noah agreed, leaning against a boulder, "though I'm seeing it a bit differently today." "How so?" "Through your eyes," he said simply. "Sometimes, you need a newcomer to remind you of the wonder in what you see every day." The observation struck a chord with Sophia. How long had it been since she'd truly seen anything in her daily life with fresh eyes? When had the view from her corner office, once a source of pride and achievement, become just another background to endless meetings and phone calls? "I think I forgot how to see beauty," she said quietly. "Everything became about function, efficiency, profit margins, even relationships." Noah studied her face, his blue eyes thoughtful. "What happened, Sophia? What really brought you to Saguaro Canyon?" The question was gentle but direct, and Sophia found herself wanting to answer honestly. Perhaps it was the vastness of the landscape, making her own defenses seem small and unnecessary. Or perhaps it was simply that Noah asked with genuine interest rather than polite obligation. "I collapsed during a board meeting," she said, the admission still painful to voice. "Stress, exhaustion, anxiety. The doctor called it a, quote, systemic breakdown. Said if I didn't make major changes, the next episode could be worse." She took a deep breath, the desert air filling her lungs. I'd been ignoring the signs for months. Panic attacks, insomnia, weight loss. I kept thinking I just needed to push through, to be stronger. Noah remained silent, giving her space to continue. The day after I was released from the hospital, I ended my engagement, resigned from my position, and started driving. She gave a small laugh that held little humor, not exactly the carefully planned exit strategy I'd teach my junior associates. "Sounds to me like your body made the decision your mind wasn't ready for," Noah observed. "Sometimes instinct is smarter than intellect." Sophia considered this. "Maybe. Or maybe I just broke under pressure I should have been able to handle. Or maybe," Noah suggested quietly, "you were finally honest about what you really wanted." The statement hung in the air between them, a possibility Sophia hadn't allowed herself to consider. Had walking away been not a failure but an act of self-preservation, of authenticity? Before she could respond, Einstein, who had been exploring nearby, gave a sharp bark of warning. Noah was immediately alert, scanning their surroundings. "We should head back," he said, his tone suddenly serious. "Weather's changing faster than I expected." Sophia looked up to see dark clouds building on the western horizon, moving with surprising speed. The clear blue sky of morning was rapidly disappearing beneath their advance. "Desert storms can be dangerous," Noah explained as he helped her remount. "Flash floods, lightning strikes. This canyon can go from bone dry to raging river in minutes." The urgency in his voice banished any lingering introspection. They descended the trail at a pace that tested Sophia's newfound riding skills, Noah frequently glancing at the approaching storm. The wind had picked up, carrying the scent of rain and electricity. They reached the ranch just as the first fat drops began to fall. Ranch hands were already securing equipment and animals, moving with practiced efficiency that spoke of experience with the canyon's sudden moods. Noah helped Sophia dismount and handed Mariposa's reins to Louise. "Get them settled quickly," he instructed. "This looks like it could be a big one." By the time they reached the main house, the rain was coming down in sheets, driven sideways by gusting wind. Thunder cracked overhead, followed almost immediately by lightning that illuminated the darkened canyon in stark relief. "That was close," Rosa commented as they entered, already setting out towels for them to dry off. "The canyon spirits are restless today." Sophia accepted the towel gratefully, suddenly aware of how quickly the temperature had dropped. Despite the brief exposure, she was shivering in her damp clothes. "You should change," Noah advised, running the towel over his own wet hair. "Desert storms may be fierce, but they usually pass quickly. We can wait it out here." Following Rosa's directions, Sophia found a bathroom where she could change into dry clothes from the stack Noah's sister had left. When she returned to the main room, she found Noah stoking a fire in the massive stone fireplace, the dancing flames casting warm light through the room as the storm darkened the windows. "Perfect timing," Rosa announced, emerging from the kitchen with a tray of steaming mugs. Hot chocolate with a little something extra for the chill. The something extra turned out to be a hint of cinnamon and what Sophia suspected was a touch of whiskey, a combination that warmed her from the inside out as she sipped it gratefully. The three of them sat before the fire, listening to the storm rage outside. There was something primal and comforting about being sheltered while nature displayed its power, a feeling Sophia couldn't remember experiencing since childhood snowstorms in Boston. "Storms like this are why the canyon is so beautiful," Noah explained, watching the flames. "They carve the stone, bring water to the desert, change the landscape in ways that seem destructive but are actually creative. The canyon needs these moments of chaos to become what it's meant to be." Sophia wondered if he was still talking about the weather or if, like her, he was thinking about the storms that reshape human lives as well. Before she could ask, a particularly violent gust of wind rattled the windows, followed by a crash from outside. Noah was on his feet immediately. "That came from the barn," he said, already moving toward the door. "I need to check on the horses." "I'll come with you," Sophia offered, surprised by her own impulse. The old Sophia would have stayed by the fire, letting others handle the crisis. Noah hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Stay close to me," he instructed, grabbing 2 rain slickers from hooks by the door and handing one to her. The short distance to the barn felt much longer as they battled wind and rain. Sophia followed Noah's sure steps, grateful for the borrowed boots that kept her footing secure in the suddenly muddy yard. The crash had been a section of the barn's roof, torn loose by the wind, and now dangling precariously over the entrance. Inside, the horses were agitated, some whinnying in distress as thunder continued to shake the building. Noah moved quickly from stall to stall, his voice a constant stream of soothing words that seemed to calm the animals. "Can I help?" Sophia asked, having to raise her voice over the storm. Noah glanced at her, perhaps assessing her sincerity or capability. "Talk to them," he said finally. "Let them know they're not alone. Sometimes that's all any of us need during a storm." It felt awkward at first. Sophia Bennett, who gave presentations to rooms full of investors without breaking a sweat, suddenly self-conscious about talking to horses. But as she moved along the stalls, murmuring what she hoped were comforting words, she found an unexpected connection forming. The animals responded to her presence, their initial panic subsiding as she continued her one-sided conversations. "You're good with them," Noah observed, returning from securing the damaged section of roof. "They can sense authenticity, you know. Can't fake your way through a relationship with a horse." "Unlike with people," Sophia said wryly, stroking the velvety nose of a black mare who had pushed her head over the stall door. "Most people, too, eventually," Noah replied, his eyes holding hers for a moment longer than necessary. "The truth has a way of surfacing, especially when storms hit." As if to punctuate his words, another crash of thunder shook the barn, but this time the horses remained relatively calm, as if they'd collectively decided that with these humans present, there was no need for fear. They stayed in the barn until the worst of the storm passed, Noah taking the opportunity to show Sophia the basics of horse care, how to check for stones in hooves, the proper way to brush a coat, the importance of talking to the animal before approaching from behind. His hands were gentle but confident, his knowledge clearly born of a lifetime's experience. By the time they returned to the house, the storm had reduced to a gentle rain, and the setting sun was beginning to break through the clouds to the west, creating a spectacular rainbow that arched over the entire canyon. "That," Noah said, pausing to admire the sight, "is why we endure the storms." The rainbow's vibrant colors against the backdrop of dramatic clouds and wet, gleaming red rock created a scene so beautiful it almost hurt to look at it. Sophia found herself blinking back unexpected tears, overcome by the simple perfection of the morning light filtered through the cabin windows, casting golden patterns across the worn wooden floor. Sophia woke to the distant sounds of ranch life already in motion, the gentle lowing of cattle, the rhythmic clang of metal from the workshop, a dog barking in joyful greeting. 3 days had passed since the storm, and somehow the broken fuel pump that had stranded her now felt more like serendipity than misfortune. She dressed in Maggie's borrowed clothes, now feeling natural against her skin. Faded jeans, a soft flannel shirt, and those perfectly broken-in boots. The woman who stared back from the small mirror above the dresser was becoming a stranger to her in the most liberating way. Her hair, usually styled with precision, now fell in natural waves around her face. Her skin had taken on a golden hue from days spent outdoors, and fine lines that stress had etched around her eyes were already softening. Miguel from Cedar Ridge had promised to have her car fixed by tomorrow. The thought, which should have brought relief, instead settled in her stomach like a stone. Sophia pushed it aside as she stepped out into the crisp morning air. Time enough to think about leaving later. The main house kitchen was empty except for Einstein, who greeted her with a thumping tail and expectant eyes. A note from Rosa in elegant, old-fashioned script sat beside a covered plate of breakfast pastries. "Gone to Cedar Ridge for supplies. Noah at the east pasture fence. Coffee is hot." Sophia poured herself a mug of the strong, fragrant coffee and considered her options. In her previous life, unstructured time was a foreign concept, every moment scheduled, optimized, accounted for. Here, the day stretched before her with delicious possibility. Almost without conscious decision, she found herself gathering a second mug of coffee and some pastries in a small bag. Einstein watched her preparations with increasing excitement, clearly hoping to be included in whatever expedition she was planning. "East pasture?" she asked the dog, who immediately bounded to the door, looking back at her with what could only be described as a grin. "I guess you know the way." The morning was perfect. Warm sunshine tempered by a cool breeze that carried the scent of sage and juniper. Einstein led her along a well-worn path that wound through stands of scrubby pine before opening onto a vista of the eastern canyon. Below, a meadow of surprisingly lush grass stretched to meet the red rock walls, dotted with grazing cattle. She spotted Noah immediately, his figure unmistakable even at a distance as he worked on a section of fence near the far edge of the pasture. Einstein announced their approach with an enthusiastic bark, causing Noah to look up from his work. The smile that spread across his face when he saw her triggered something unexpected in Sophia's chest, a flutter that had nothing to do with the uphill walk, and everything to do with the genuine pleasure in his expression. "Morning, city girl," he called as she approached. "You're up and about early. Thought you might want coffee," she replied, holding up the thermos. Rosa left for town. "A woman bearing caffeine is always welcome company," he said, setting down his tools and wiping his hands on a bandana. "Especially when she looks like she belongs here already." The casual compliment warmed her more than it should have. "These clothes make a big difference," she acknowledged, handing him a steaming mug. "Amazing what the right gear can do." Noah accepted the coffee gratefully, taking a long sip before responding. "It's not just the clothes," he said, his blue eyes studying her over the rim of his mug. "There's something different about you this morning. You're settled somehow." The observation was startlingly accurate. Sophia did feel settled, grounded in a way she hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. The constant background hum of anxiety that had been her companion for so long had quieted to near silence. "I slept through the night again," she admitted. "No panic attacks, no waking up in a cold sweat worried about the Westfield account or the quarterly projections. It's disconcerting, actually." Noah leaned against the fence post, regarding her with curiosity. "Disconcerting to feel good?" "Disconcerting to realize how long I haven't," she clarified. "Like I've been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale." A comfortable silence fell between them as they sipped their coffee, looking out over the canyon as it came alive with morning light. A red-tailed hawk circled lazily above, riding thermal currents with effortless grace. "So," Noah said finally, "Miguel called this morning. Your car will be ready tomorrow." "Oh." Sophia kept her eyes on the hawk, not trusting herself to meet his gaze. "That's good news." "Is it?" The question was gentle but direct. Sophia turned to find him watching her, his expression open and waiting. No pressure, no expectation. Just a simple question that cut to the heart of her confusion. "I don't know," she admitted. "I should be eager to get back on the road, to figure out what comes next." That was the plan. Drive until I found clarity. She gestured at the breathtaking landscape around them. "I didn't expect this. This being? Peace," she said simply. "I came looking for what was missing in my life, and I found it in the last place I would have expected. A ranch in the middle of nowhere with no cell service and people who measure success by entirely different standards than I've spent my life pursuing." Noah set down his coffee mug on a nearby rock. "What would happen if you stayed a while longer?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Sophia had been so focused on escaping her old life that she hadn't seriously considered what building a new one might look like. "I don't know anything about ranch life," she said, the practical objection automatic. "I'd be useless here." Noah's laugh was warm, without a trace of mockery. "You've already proven that's not true. Besides, most skills can be learned. The important things, character, heart, willingness to try, those are harder to come by. You make it sound so simple." "It is, and it isn't." Noah gestured toward the repaired section of fence. "This work isn't complicated, but it's not easy either. Takes patience, persistence, willingness to get your hands dirty." His eyes met hers again. "Reminds me of someone I've been getting to know these past few days." Sophia felt a blush rising to her cheeks. Unused to such straightforward appreciation. In her corporate world, compliments were usually strategic, designed to extract maximum productivity or allegiance. Noah's sincerity was both refreshing and unnerving. "I'm not sure what I'd do here," she said, trying to imagine herself as a permanent part of this landscape. "Well, for starters, you could help me finish this fence," Noah replied pragmatically. "After that, we can figure out the rest one day at a time." The simplicity of the invitation to exist in the present moment without a 5-year plan or defined objectives was exactly what Sophia needed. She found herself nodding, then rolling up her sleeves. "Show me how to help," she said. For the next several hours, Noah taught her the basics of fence repair. How to stretch wire without breaking it, the proper way to secure it to posts, how to test for stability. The work was physical in a way Sophia's body wasn't accustomed to, using muscles that had been neglected during years behind a desk. By midday, her hands were sore despite the work gloves Noah had lent her, and a healthy sweat had dampened her shirt. Strangely, the discomfort felt good, real in a way that the stress-induced exhaustion of her corporate life never had. This was honest fatigue, earned through tangible accomplishment. The repaired fence stood as visible proof of their morning's effort, unlike the endless digital reports and presentations that had consumed her previous existence without leaving any physical trace in the world. "You're a quick learner," Noah observed as they gathered their tools. "Sure you haven't done this before?" Sophia laughed, holding up her gloved hands. "Pretty sure, but it's satisfying in a way I didn't expect." She looked back at their handiwork. "In my old job, nothing was ever really finished. There was always another deal, another client, another crisis. This is done. We fixed it. Until the next storm or stray bull decides otherwise," Noah amended with a smile. "But that's ranch life. You fix what breaks, maintain what works, and learn to accept that some things are beyond your control." "That last part might be the hardest lesson for me," Sophia admitted. "I've spent years believing that with enough effort, enough planning, enough control, I could prevent anything from going wrong." "How'd that work out for you?" Noah's question carried no judgment, just genuine curiosity. Sophia's laugh held a touch of self-deprecation. "Landed me in the hospital with what my doctor called acute exhaustion and anxiety, and what my mother insisted on referring to as a nervous condition, like I was a character in a Victorian novel." They began walking back toward the ranch house, Einstein ranging ahead of them, occasionally circling back as if to ensure they were still following. "My father had a saying," Noah said as they walked. "You can't stop the rain, but you can build a good roof." Always thought that was pretty solid life advice. "Your father sounds wise." "He was," Noah replied, a fleeting sadness crossing his features. "Lost him 3 years ago. Heart attack while out riding fence lines. Much like we were doing today. The hands found him still in the saddle. His horse had brought him home." "I'm sorry," Sophia said softly, touched by both the loss and the way Noah spoke of it. With sadness, but not bitterness, as if death were simply another part of the canyon's cycle. "He lived exactly the life he wanted," Noah said after a moment. "Not many people can say that." The simple epitaph struck Sophia deeply. What would people say about her life if it had ended during that board meeting when she collapsed? That she'd been successful by external metrics but hollow inside? That she'd achieved everything society told her to want but nothing that truly nourished her soul? They walked in companionable silence for a while, the question settling into Sophia's thoughts like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples through her consciousness. As they approached the ranch house, Rosa's truck was visible in the drive, and the sounds of activity drifted from the kitchen. Pots clanging, the radio playing softly, Rosa's melodic humming as she worked. "Perfect timing," Noah said. "Rosa always cooks enough for an army when she's been to town. She claims it's because ranch work builds appetites, but I think she just loves feeding people." The kitchen was indeed a flurry of activity, with Rosa orchestrating what appeared to be preparations for a feast rather than a simple lunch. The counters were covered with fresh produce. A pot of something aromatic simmered on the stove, and the old oak table was already set for a meal. "Ah, there you are," Rosa exclaimed, looking up from her chopping. "Good, you worked up an appetite. We have guests coming for dinner tonight." Noah raised an eyebrow. "We do?" "The Reyes family," Rosa confirmed. Miguel mentioned he finished Sophia's car early, so I invited them to bring it out tonight instead of tomorrow. Thought we could make a proper dinner of it. She gave Sophia a meaningful look. A proper goodbye, if that's what it is to be. The reminder of her imminent departure sent a pang through Sophia that must have shown on her face, because Rosa's expression softened. Or perhaps not a goodbye at all, the older woman amended. Time will tell, yes? As Noah excused himself to clean up before lunch, Rosa gestured for Sophia to join her at the counter. Here, make yourself useful, she said, handing her a knife and a pile of vegetables. Chop these for the salad. Sophia accepted the task gratefully, finding comfort in the simple, repetitive motion. Her culinary skills were limited to the basics. In Seattle, most of her meals had come from restaurants or pre-prepared delivery services that catered to busy executives. But chopping vegetables required no special expertise. You are good with a knife, Rosa observed, watching her work. Precise. Years of spreadsheets and presentations, Sophia replied with a small smile. Attention to detail was my specialty. Rosa nodded approvingly. A valuable skill, no matter where it's applied. She added spices to the simmering pot, the fragrant steam rising to fill the kitchen with mouth-watering aromas. Noah tells me your car will be fixed today. Have you decided what comes next? The direct question didn't surprise Sophia. She'd come to expect Rosa's straightforward approach. I'm still figuring that out, she admitted. The original plan was to keep driving, to find somewhere I could. I don't know, start over, I guess. And now? Rosa's dark eyes were kind but penetrating. Now I'm wondering if I've already found it, Sophia said quietly, giving voice to the thought that had been forming since her conversation with Noah. Which is ridiculous. I've known this place, these people, for less than a week. Rosa's smile was knowing. The heart sometimes recognizes home before the mind catches up. She turned back to her cooking. When I first came to the canyon, I was only passing through a young woman on my way to California to make my fortune. My car broke down outside Cedar Ridge. The parallel wasn't lost on Sophia. What made you stay? Many things. The beauty of this place. Work that needed doing. People who saw me clearly. Rosa stirred her pot thoughtfully. But mostly, I stayed because when I thought about leaving, something inside me said no, very firmly. The body knows things the mind tries to ignore. Sophia considered this as she finished chopping the vegetables. Her body had certainly been sending her messages for months before her collapse. Messages she determinedly ignored until they became too loud to dismiss. I'm afraid, she confessed, surprising herself with the admission. Afraid that what I'm feeling is just temporary relief from stress, not a genuine connection to this place. Afraid I'll walk away from a successful career only to discover I've made a terrible mistake. Rosa nodded, accepting the bowl of chopped vegetables. Fear is natural when standing at a crossroads, but consider this, you already walked away from that career. The question now is not what you're leaving, but what you're walking toward. The distinction struck Sophia as profound in its simplicity. She had indeed already left her old life. That decision had been made the day she handed in her resignation and started driving with no destination in mind. What remained was not whether to go back. She knew instinctively that was impossible, but where to go next? I don't know if I belong here, she said, voicing her deepest uncertainty. Belonging is not something you find, like a lost key, Rosa replied, her hands moving confidently through her cooking preparations. It is something you build, day by day, through choice and action and love. Before Sophia could respond, the back door opened and Noah reappeared, freshly showered and changed, his damp hair curling slightly at the temples. Something fluttered in Sophia's chest at the sight of him, a sensation both unfamiliar and exhilarating. Whatever you're cooking smells amazing, Rosa, he said, coming to investigate the pot on the stove. Special occasion? Life is the special occasion. M.I. Rosa replied, with affectionate exasperation, swatting his hand away from the pot. Now, both of you, out of my kitchen until lunch is ready. Go, show Sophia the workshop. I need space to create. Dutifully banished, Noah led Sophia across the yard to the large workshop she'd glimpsed on her first day. Inside, the space was larger than it appeared from outside, with high ceilings and generous windows that filled it with natural light. One section was clearly devoted to ranch maintenance, tools organized on pegboards, spare parts neatly labeled, equipment waiting for repair. But the larger portion was set up as a craftsman's workshop, with woodworking tools, leather working stations, and several projects in various stages of completion. The saddle she'd admired earlier sat on a central workbench, the carved design more complete than when she'd last seen it. "This is incredible," Sophia said, running her fingers along a beautifully joined wooden cabinet. "You made all this?" Noah nodded, a hint of pride in his expression. "Winter projects mostly, when ranch work slows down. My grandfather started the tradition, said idle hands led to trouble, so every Callahan man should have a craft." "What was his?" "Blacksmithing." Noah pointed to several decorative iron pieces mounted on the walls, candle holders, coat hooks, and a particularly beautiful weather vane shaped like a running horse. "He could make functional art out of scrap metal," said the fire spoke to him. Sophia moved around the workshop, taking in the evidence of skill and patience that surrounded her. In her former world, craftsmanship had been an abstract concept, something appreciated mainly as luxury goods to be purchased and displayed. Here was something different. Creation for the joy of creation, skill honed not for profit, but for the satisfaction of making something beautiful and lasting. "What would you say is your specialty?" she asked, genuinely curious about how Noah saw his own work. He considered the question thoughtfully. "I'm decent with wood, better with leather." He ran a hand along the carved saddle. "But I think what I enjoy most is restoration, taking something broken or worn out and bringing it back to life. There's something deeply satisfying about seeing the beauty that's always been there, just waiting to be revealed again." Sophia's eyes met his, sensing that they were no longer talking only about craftsmanship. The metaphor hung between them, unspoken but understood. "Sometimes things break beyond repair," she said softly, thinking of her former life, her ended engagement. "True," Noah acknowledged. "But more often, what looks beyond saving just needs the right kind of care. Patience, understanding of what it once was and what it could be again." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "The trick is knowing the difference." Sophia felt herself drawn toward him, the magnetic pull she'd been resisting since their first meeting growing stronger. There was something about Noah Callahan that called to a part of her she'd nearly forgotten existed. The part that believed in possibilities rather than probabilities, in leaps of faith rather than calculated risks. The workshop door swung open before either could bridge the distance between them. "Lunch is ready," Rosa announced, her knowing gaze taking in their proximity with barely concealed satisfaction. "Come before it gets cold." The afternoon passed in a flurry of preparations for the evening's dinner. Rosa enlisted Sophia's help with everything from setting the long table on the porch. "Better to eat outside on such a beautiful evening," she declared, to arranging wildflowers in mismatched mason jars as centerpieces. What struck Sophia most was how different this kind of preparation felt from the corporate events she'd orchestrated in her previous life. There, everything had been about impression management, strategic seating arrangements, calculating the return on investment for every detail. Here, the preparations were joyful rather than strategic, creating beauty and comfort for its own sake, not for what might be gained from it. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Sophia retreated to her cabin to change for dinner. Standing before the small mirror, she hesitated over what to wear. Her instinct was to reach for the designer clothes she'd arrived in, to present herself as the polished professional she'd been trained to be. But something made her pause, her hand hovering over her Seattle wardrobe. Instead, she chose the nicest of Maggie's borrowed clothes, a simple sundress in soft blue cotton that somehow suited both the setting and the woman she was becoming. She left her hair loose around her shoulders and added only a touch of lip balm for makeup. The reflection that gazed back at her seemed both familiar and strange, as if she were meeting a version of herself that had always existed beneath the carefully constructed exterior, waiting for permission to emerge. The sound of vehicles approaching drew her out onto the cabin porch. Miguel's tow truck came first, Sophia's convertible in tow behind it. Following close behind was a family SUV that presumably contained the rest of the Reyes family Rosa had mentioned. Noah emerged from the main house to greet them, his easy warmth evident even at a distance as he helped an older woman from the SUV and embraced Miguel like a brother rather than a service provider. Children spilled from the vehicle, 2 boys who immediately raced toward the barn, and a teenage girl who hung back shyly, her eyes taking in the ranch with evident appreciation. Sophia hesitated at the edge of her cabin porch, suddenly feeling like an outsider again. These people had history together, connections built over years. What place could she possibly have in this established web of relationships? As if sensing her uncertainty, Noah looked up and caught her eye across the yard. The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the canyon, warm, illuminating, full of promise. He gestured for her to join them, and Sophia found herself moving forward, drawn by that smile and the invitation it contained. "Sophia, come meet the Reyes family," Noah called. "Miguel you know already. This is his mother, Elena, his wife Teresa, and their daughter Lucia. The boys who just disappeared are Mateo and Diego." The introductions were warm, without the careful assessment Sophia was accustomed to in professional settings. These people welcomed her simply because she was Noah's guest. No credentials or accomplishments required. "So you are the city girl with the broken car," Elena said, her eyes twinkling with good humor. "Sometimes the best journeys begin with a breakdown, yes?" The knowing look the older woman gave her suggested she wasn't just talking about vehicles. Before Sophia could respond, Rosa appeared on the main house porch, calling everyone to dinner. The table on the porch had been transformed by Rosa's efforts into something magical. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm golden glow as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The wildflower centerpieces added bursts of color against the simple white tablecloth, and the mismatched china plates, clearly saved for special occasions, lent a charm no designer could have replicated. As everyone settled around the table, Sophia found herself seated between Noah and Lucia, the Reyes' teenage daughter. The girl was quiet at first, answering Sophia's friendly questions with shy monosyllables, but when the conversation turned to her interest in photography, Lucia's reserve melted away. "I want to capture the canyon in all its moods," she explained, her dark eyes lighting with passion. "Everyone photographs it in perfect light, but I think it's most beautiful during storms, or at dawn when the mist still clings to the rocks, or in winter when snow outlines every edge." "She has a true artist's eye," Noah commented, genuine admiration in his voice. "Sees things the rest of us miss." Lucia blushed at the praise. "Mr. Callahan is helping me apply for art school scholarships," she told Sophia. "He says talent deserves nurturing, even if it doesn't lead to a practical career." Sophia glanced at Noah, surprised once again by the depth beneath his cowboy exterior. "He's right," she told Lucia. "I spent years pursuing what seemed practical rather than what fed my soul. It's a choice I've come to regret." "What would you have done differently?" Lucia asked, the directness of youth cutting to the heart of the matter. The question gave Sophia pause. What would she have chosen if practicality and security hadn't been her guiding concerns? "I loved literature," she admitted, the long-buried passion surfacing unexpectedly. "I wanted to teach, to share stories that changed how people saw the world, but my parents convinced me it wasn't a sensible path." "It's not too late, you know," Noah said quietly, his eyes holding hers. "Second chances come in many forms." Moonlight silvered the canyon as dinner concluded, the conversation flowing as easily as the homemade wine Miguel had brought. Stories wove between English and Spanish, laughter bridging any gaps in translation. Sophia found herself drawn into the warm circle of friendship as if she'd always belonged there. "So, Sophia," Elena asked as Rosa served coffee and a stunning flan that glistened in the lantern light, "now that your car is fixed, where will your journey take you next?" The question silenced the table, all eyes turning to her with undisguised interest. Sophia felt the weight of expectation, not pressure exactly, but genuine curiosity about her choice. "I'm not certain," she admitted, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "My original plan was rather unplanned, just driving until something felt right." "And has something felt right?" Teresa asked gently, her knowing glance between Sophia and Noah suggesting she already had her own theory. Sophia felt a blush rising to her cheeks. "This place has a way of getting under your skin," she acknowledged. "The canyon, the ranch. It's all been unexpectedly healing." "The land has its own medicine," Elena nodded sagely. "My grandmother was a curandera, a healer. She said certain places hold power to mend what is broken in us, if we are wise enough to stay and listen. The question is whether you're wise enough, Miguel added with a teasing smile, though his eyes were kind. City folk often mistake peace for boredom. The observation struck closer to home than Sophia cared to admit. Wasn't that exactly what worried her? That what felt like revelation now might eventually become monotony. That she might trade one form of emptiness for another. I think, Noah said quietly beside her, that wisdom sometimes looks like taking a chance on happiness, even when it comes in unexpected packaging. Their eyes met across the small space between them, and something electric passed between them. Possibility, promise, the hint of a future neither had anticipated. Sophia found herself unable to look away, even as conversation resumed around them. Later, as the Reyes family prepared to leave, Miguel handed Sophia her car keys with a ceremonial flourish. "Good as new," he declared proudly. "Though I hope you won't be in a hurry to use them." His meaning wasn't subtle, nor was the approving glance he directed toward Noah, who was helping Elena into the family SUV. "Thank you," Sophia said sincerely. "Not just for fixing the car, but for including me tonight. It meant more than you know." After the headlights of the departing vehicles had disappeared down the canyon road, a curious hush fell over the ranch. Rosa had retired to her small house on the property. The ranch hands were either asleep or in town for Saturday night, and even Einstein had curled up on the porch, exhausted from entertaining the Reyes children. Sophia found herself alone with Noah for the first time since their interrupted moment in the workshop. They stood side by side on the porch, looking out at the moonlit canyon, comfortable in the shared silence. "I should probably turn in," Sophia said finally, though she made no move to leave. "It's been a full day." "It has," Noah agreed. He turned to face her, his expression serious in the silver light. "Sophia, I know you have a decision to make, and I know it's not a simple one. I just want you to know that whatever you choose, these past days haven't been ordinary for me either." The admission hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Noah Callahan wasn't a man who played games or spoke in riddles. His straightforwardness was yet another quality that set him apart from the men she'd known in her previous life. "I keep thinking this should feel crazy," Sophia confessed, contemplating such a massive change based on a few days' experience. "In my former world, I wouldn't make a minor investment decision without weeks of research and risk assessment, let alone something like this." Noah's smile was gentle. "Maybe that's exactly why this feels right, because it's not a decision you can spreadsheet your way through. Some choices can only be made with the heart." "The heart can be unreliable," Sophia pointed out. "So can spreadsheets," he countered. "They only measure what you already know how to quantify. They can't account for joy, purpose, the feeling of being exactly where you're meant to be." As if to punctuate his words, a shooting star blazed across the canyon sky, leaving a brief, brilliant trail before disappearing. They both looked up, caught in the shared moment of unexpected beauty. "Make a wish," Noah said softly. Sophia closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to wish not for achievement or security, but for courage. Courage to trust the quiet voice inside her that had been growing stronger with each canyon sunrise. When she opened her eyes, Noah was watching her, the moonlight silvering his features. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned forward. The kiss was gentle, questioning rather than demanding, an invitation rather than a claim. Sophia responded with a certainty that surprised her, her hands rising to rest lightly on his shoulders as the kiss deepened. Something shifted inside her, a recognition, a homecoming, as if pieces of herself long separated were finally reconnecting. When they finally parted, Noah rested his forehead against hers, his breathing slightly uneven. "I've wanted to do that since I found you stranded in the canyon," he admitted. "Even in my impractical shoes and corporate armor?" Sophia teased gently. "Especially then," he replied, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "There was something about your determination not to need help, even when you clearly did. It was compelling." Sophia laughed softly. "Stubbornness has always been my specialty." "I prefer to call it strength," Noah corrected. "The same strength that brought you all the way from Seattle to find what you needed, even when you weren't sure what that was." His faith in her, in who she was beneath the carefully constructed professional persona, touched something deep within Sophia. Throughout her career, she'd been valued for what she could do, what she could achieve, what advantage she could provide. Noah seemed to value her simply for who she was, flaws and uncertainties included. "I should go," she said reluctantly, aware that if she stayed, the decision she needed to make might become even more complicated. "I have some thinking to do." Noah nodded, respecting her need for space without taking offense. "The canyon's good for thinking," he agreed. "Puts things in perspective." He walked her to her cabin door, their fingers intertwined in a connection that felt both new and somehow familiar, as if they'd been moving toward this moment far longer than their brief acquaintance would suggest. At her door, he kissed her once more, a gentle good night rather than a passionate declaration. "Sleep well, Sophia Bennett," he said softly. "Whatever you decide, know that you've already changed something here for the better." Inside her cabin, Sophia moved to the small window that faced the canyon. The moon had risen higher now, bathing the landscape in ethereal light that transformed the rugged terrain into something almost otherworldly. In the distance, the silhouette of a coyote moved along a ridge, a solitary hunter, comfortable in the vastness. How strange, she thought, that less than a week ago she'd been sitting in a Seattle hospital room, diagnosed with exhaustion and anxiety, her body finally rebelling against the relentless demands she'd placed upon it. Now here she stood, contemplating a life so different from anything she'd planned that it felt almost like a dream. And yet, it didn't feel like running away. For the first time, Sophia was considering running toward something, toward authenticity, toward a life measured not in acquisitions and achievements, but in moments of genuine connection and purpose. Sleep came easily that night, deep and dreamless, her body and mind finally aligned in peaceful harmony. She woke to the first light of dawn filtering through her window, and a clarity she hadn't expected. Rising quietly, Sophia dressed in the now familiar borrowed clothes and slipped outside. The canyon was transformed in the early morning light, the red rocks glowing as if lit from within, dew sparkling on the sparse vegetation like scattered diamonds. Without conscious decision, she found herself walking toward the trail that led up the canyon wall, the same path she and Noah had taken on horseback days earlier. The climb was steeper than she remembered, and she was breathing hard by the time she reached the plateau where they'd stopped to rest. But the view was worth every labored breath. From this height, the ranch looked like a miniature model set within the vast landscape, the buildings and corrals mere suggestions of human presence in the timeless canyon. The perspective shift was exactly what she needed, a reminder that her personal drama was both significant and infinitesimal, her choices monumental to her own life, but a mere footnote in the canyon's ancient story. As the sun crested the eastern rim, bathing the scene in golden light, Sophia felt something settle within her. Not certainty exactly, but a willingness to embrace uncertainty, to step into the unknown with courage rather than fear. She was still sitting there, watching the day unfold below, when the sound of approaching footsteps made her turn. Noah climbed the last few yards of the trail, Einstein bounding ahead to greet her with enthusiastic affection. "Rosa said you'd gone walking," Noah explained, settling beside her on the sun-warmed stone. "Thought you might want company, but I can leave if you'd prefer to be alone." "Stay," Sophia said simply. "Please." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching as the ranch came to life below. Ranch hands moving between buildings, horses being led to pastures, the distant figure of Rosa hanging laundry on a line behind the main house. "I've been thinking about what you said last night," Sophia said finally. "About some choices only being made with the heart." Noah turned to her, his expression carefully neutral, though she could sense the hope he was trying to contain. "And I realized something important," she continued. "When I left Seattle, I wasn't just running away from burnout or a failed engagement. I was running away from a life I'd built around other people's expectations, my parents, my colleagues, societies. I never once stopped to ask myself what I actually wanted." Noah listened intently, giving her the space to find her way through the thoughts she was still formulating. "The irony is that I was considered a decisive leader, someone who could make tough calls under pressure. But those decisions were always within a framework I hadn't chosen, like picking the best option from a menu someone else had written. She turned to face him fully. "This is the first time I'm writing my own menu, and it's terrifying." "Terrifying can be good," Noah offered. "It usually means you're growing." Sophia smiled, recognizing the truth in his words. "My whole life has been about minimizing risk, securing the safe option, but I'm beginning to think the riskiest thing I could do is return to a life that was slowly killing me, just because it's familiar." Hope flickered more visibly in Noah's eyes now. "Does that mean you're considering staying?" "I'm considering a trial period," Sophia clarified, the executive in her not quite ready to abandon all caution. 3 months, time to really understand what life here would be like beyond this first flush of whatever this is. She gestured between them, not quite ready to name the attraction that had grown so quickly. Noah's smile was understanding. "A reasonable compromise between heart and head," he acknowledged. "Though I should warn you, 3 months in the canyon might change you even more than these few days have." "I'm counting on it," Sophia admitted. "I need to know if this peace I've found here is real and lasting, or just the temporary relief of escaping pressure." "And what about your car?" Noah asked, practical even in this moment of possibility. "Miguel assures me it's ready for whatever journey you choose." Sophia looked down at the keys she'd been unconsciously turning over in her hand since receiving them from Miguel the night before. "I think my car and I both needed repair," she said thoughtfully. "But now we're fixed. I'm not sure we need to rush back to the highway." The relief and joy that spread across Noah's face made something bloom in Sophia's chest, a feeling of rightness, of having made a choice that honored both prudence and possibility. "The blue cabin is yours for as long as you want it," he said, reaching for her hand. "No pressure, no expectations. Just space to discover what comes next." "I'll need to earn my keep," Sophia insisted, the work ethic that had driven her corporate success asserting itself in this new context. "I can't just be a guest indefinitely." Noah considered this. "Rosa's been saying for years that we need someone to bring order to the business side of the ranch. My father managed with notebooks and shoeboxes of receipts. But times are changing. Perhaps your financial expertise could be put to use." The suggestion was perfect, a bridge between her old skills and this new world, a way to contribute meaningfully while she found her footing. "I'd like that," she agreed. "Though I should warn you, once I start organizing systems, it can be hard to stop me." Noah's laugh was warm with genuine amusement. "The ranch could use a little city efficiency," he admitted, "just as long as you don't try to put the canyon itself into a spreadsheet." The image made Sophia smile. The futility of trying to quantify something as vast and mysterious as Saguaro Canyon. "Some things defy categorization," she agreed. "I'm learning to be comfortable with that." As the morning warmed around them, they began the descent back to the ranch, their future unfolding before them not as a certain path but as a journey they'd chosen to begin together. Einstein ran ahead, occasionally looking back as if to ensure they were still following, his joy in the simple act of movement infectious. At the base of the trail, Noah paused, turning to face Sophia with sudden seriousness. "Before we head back and this becomes official, I want to be clear about something. I'm attracted to you, obviously, but that's not why I hope you'll stay." Sophia waited, touched by his earnestness. "I hope you'll stay because in just these few days, I've seen glimpses of who you really are beneath the corporate armor, and that woman is someone I'd like to know better." His blue eyes held hers steadily. "Whatever happens between us, I believe you belong here. Not because of me, but because of how you come alive in this place." The distinction was important. He wasn't offering rescue or making claims, but acknowledging something he'd observed in her own transformation. It was perhaps the most respectful thing anyone had ever said to her. "Thank you," she said simply, the words inadequate for the emotion behind them. When they reached the main house, Rosa was waiting on the porch, her expression making it clear she'd been watching for their return, and had drawn her own conclusions about the outcome of their morning walk. "So," she said without preamble, "will I be preparing the guest cabin for a longer stay?" Sophia glanced at Noah, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "Yes," she confirmed. "If the offer still stands, I'd like to stay for a while. 3 months, to start." Rosa's smile was luminous. "Gracias a Dios," she exclaimed. "Finally, someone with sense around here. Come, we must celebrate with proper breakfast." Decision-making requires fuel. As Rosa bustled inside to prepare what would undoubtedly be a feast rather than a simple meal, Noah caught Sophia's hand, drawing her attention back to him. "Second chances come in strange packages," he said softly. "A broken-down car, a chance meeting, a canyon that seems to know what we need before we do." "I never believed in fate," Sophia admitted. "I always thought people made their own success through careful planning and hard work. And now?" Noah's question was gentle, curious rather than challenging. Sophia looked around at the ranch bathed in morning light, at the canyon walls rising majestically beyond, at the man beside her, whose golden heart had helped her see possibilities where before she'd seen only limitations. "Now I think perhaps the best plans are the ones life makes for us when our own plans fall apart," she said. "The breakdown on the canyon road may have been the luckiest moment of my life." Noah's smile held the promise of all that might come. Not a fairy tale ending, but a beginning rich with potential. "Welcome home, Sophia Bennett," he said softly, "even if it's just for 3 months." But as she followed him into the house, greeted by the scents of coffee and cinnamon and the sound of Rosa's cheerful humming, Sophia had a feeling 3 months would be just the beginning of a much longer story. The canyon had worked its magic, the cowboy had opened his heart, and she had finally found the courage to step off her carefully plotted path into the beautiful unknown. That afternoon, Sophia wrote 2 important emails using Noah's ancient desktop computer in the ranch office. The first was to her parents, explaining her decision to extend her sabbatical in Arizona. The second was to her former assistant, asking her to ship a few essential items to Cedar Ridge, mostly books and some personal mementos she wasn't ready to part with. What surprised her most as she typed was how little she missed from her former life. The designer clothes, the luxury apartment with its carefully curated artwork, the status symbols she'd accumulated. None of it called to her now. Instead, she found herself eager to return to the work Noah had suggested, organizing the ranch's haphazard business records into something more efficient. It was still accounting, still numbers and systems, but with a purpose that resonated far deeper than quarterly projections or shareholder value. These figures represented real work, done by real hands, sustaining a place and way of life that mattered not just for profit, but for its own intrinsic worth. As Sophia clicked send on the final email, she felt a sense of alignment she'd never experienced in her corporate career. Her skills serving values she genuinely believed in, her mind and heart working in harmony rather than opposition. The path ahead was uncertain, full of challenges she couldn't yet imagine, but for the first time in memory, that uncertainty felt like adventure rather than threat. Through the office window, she could see Noah in the corral, working patiently with a young horse, his movements gentle but confident, as he built trust with the nervous animal. Watching him, Sophia felt a surge of gratitude for the breakdown that had stranded her in his canyon, for the golden heart that had welcomed her without judgment, and for her own newfound courage to embrace a life beyond the safe confines she'd always known. The cowboy looked up, somehow sensing her gaze, and raised a hand in greeting. Not a farewell, but a welcome, an acknowledgement of all that might be possible in the days and months to come. Sophia raised her hand in return, a silent promise to herself as much as to him. This time, she would build a life measured not by what she accomplished, but by how fully she lived each moment. Outside, the canyon stretched vast and ancient under the afternoon sun, a testament to the beauty that emerges not despite life's upheavals, but because of them. Like the canyon itself, Sophia had begun her own transformation, carved by unexpected storms, revealing depths she hadn't known existed, becoming more authentically herself with each layer that fell away. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.